Alright, well, welcome back to another session of 7th grade visual art. We're working on our perspective drawing today of the city, and as you can see, we've been making pretty good progress on this the last couple of days. Now, the process of making a perspective drawing is pretty repetitive, but I do vary a lot of the ideas that we use in order to make, interesting passages in and out of buildings, and also to create more interesting roofs as we go, so that as you develop in your drawing abilities, you can vary what you do, even though perspective is a very repetitive operation. When you start practicing it, it also can have variations in it that make it a little bit more visually interesting to work with. So in this case, when we left off yesterday, we had just started the beginning of our second building on the right hand side of the street, and we've already got the corner of the building, as you can see here at the bottom and at the top. That's been clipped in. So this particular building is going to be similar to this one over here in size, but it's going to look quite a bit dramatically different. And so let's get a measurement off of this over here, and it says it's 4 centimeters wide. I would like to make this particular building just maybe slightly wider. Let's call it 4.5 centimeters. So I'm going to lay the 4.5 on the line that indicates the close corner of the second building. And then out here where there would be a 0, if there were a 0 on this ruler, I'll put a dot, a registration dot out there to help me know where the next vertical line is going to be, like over here, the next wall that is up touching the alleyway. So once we've got that set up there, and I think I'll write that in here as 4.5 centimeters, although it may not be totally visible to you. I'll reference that a lot, but it does say 4.5 centimeters. Okay, we're going to find our dot 4.5 centimeters away, and we're going to orient our ruler so it's perfectly straight up and down, vertical, if we can make that happen. And we can see the dot. I'm going to get right to that dot. Okay, a lot of times people will put their pencil on the dot. I see this all the time with younger students, and then they put the ruler right up against the dot, and it gives them a lot better precision. So if it works for you, try it. Okay, so I want to make sure it's perfectly straight up and down, and then I'm going to strike my line here. And my line, I'm going to bold it, but you should draw lightly in case you make a mistake, so that you can erase it later. I'm going to take that little dot off there now that I don't need it anymore. Alright, so what I've done here is I've not created a duplication of this building over here, but one about the same size and in approximately the same location. Now this particular building is going to have a variation of what we call the typical gable roof. We're going to make a what's commonly known as a Victorian roof on this, and that's going to require us to do a couple of things differently. But a lot of what we do here is always the same. So that's where we're going to start first. Let's go here about halfway across the front of this building, and we're going to put a dot above the line. And from that dot, we're going to draw a layout line, very much like we did over here when we made the gable end roof. And you may still be able to see some of the shadow marking left behind by that. So I'm going to measure off, I'm going to say about 5 centimeters. So if I place the 5 on the dot, and I can lightly draw a line, I'm going to hold the ruler down, and holding it backhanded, you really got to hold it firmly. I'm going to draw a line from that dot to the top of my ruler there, which would be the 0 if there were a 0. Now this is technically called a layout line, but everybody likes to call it an antenna. So if that works for you, that's what I call it quite frequently myself, because it looks like an antenna on that building right there. I want to put a dot on top of it simply so it gives me something to aim at. Now we're going to draw these lines lightly to begin with, and then we will bold them. So we're going to start out with a typical gable roof, and we're going to convert it into a roof that has a little flat spot on the top of it. So let's turn a ruler around the appropriate orientation. So from the corner of the building to the top of our layout line, or the antenna, hold the ruler down firmly, and you should draw lightly. And I will have to draw lightly also. Parts of this will be erased. Then we will go back and bold it. So just like we did right over here, we're doing again right here. Now we'll do the exact same thing again. Now I'm going to work on the backhand side of the ruler because I want to see what I'm drawing. So from dot to dot, I'm holding that ruler down firmly, and I'm going to go from, well, no, it slipped. Okay, from the corner to the dot on the top of the layout line. Okay, I'm going to draw it. You should draw lightly so that you can erase later. Okay, now here's where this is going to get kind of tricky and strange. We're going to cut the top off of this. We're going to truncate these triangles that we made right here. Now, in order for this to happen, we have to reproduce this tilt right here. So here's my advice for that. Let's put your ruler on that tilted line, like this. Then we need to slide up. Let's put a dot about right here. In fact, let's measure it. We should always just measure it. So we're going to come down from the peak of our roof. We're going to come down 1 centimeter and make a dot on the antenna. Alright, now, here's what we got to do again. We'll do this again. We'll find that tilt, just like that. We'll slide it up till we find our dot. That's 1 centimeter down. And we have to compare these tilted lines. So this line right here needs to be tilted at the same angle as that line. And that looks pretty close. So I'm simply going to truncate. That means I'm going to cut the end off of this roof here, just like that. Now that I've truncated that, it's just like if you ate a piece of pizza, you ate the end off a piece of pizza, you would have truncated it. Now we'll just erase this. So our Victorian roof has a bit of a flat spot on top of it. If you've been to some older neighborhoods, you've probably seen roofs that have got like little railings around the top of them and a flat spot on them. When you do that, you know that you're looking at something that's at least a Victorian revival, perhaps, house. Okay, now we've got to draw straight sideways, just like we did over here and with the rounded roof. So from this corner right here, take our ruler, lay it against that pencil if you need to do it this way. This should be straight horizontally. It should not tilt. It should go straight sidewards or horizontal. And it will disappear behind the building that we drew on the first building on the right hand side of the street. Now we can go back and bold our lines a bit because we had to draw lightly since we had to do erasing, and because of that it helps us to get a better drawing, but it also makes you have to go back and maybe touch up work that you had done previously simply to make it visible. Okay, especially for me since I am drawing on a projection. Alright, so that is the beginning of all of this. It looks pretty good if you ask me. So we can start with a door again. So like this door over here, we've got doors in this building too. They get slightly smaller as they go away from us. So I'm going to put the top left corner of my ruler on the vanishing point. I'm going to rotate it up until it hits this door. Right at the top of that door, we should only be able to see just a piece of it peeking out from behind it. Make sure you're pointing towards a vanishing point. And in this case, since we made this building a little bit wider, we're going to make 2 lines. So we're going to start far away from us over here with a space. We're going to make a line, and we're going to lift up, and we're going to make a slightly longer line because the door that is closer to us will be slightly larger. Now when we move our ruler, we can see what we have done. So what we're simply doing is making 2 doors rather than one that's hinged on both sides and opens. We're going to make 2 separate doors this time. So let's check it again, make sure it tilts towards the vanishing point. And in my case, the answer is yes. So I can bold that line a little bit. So there will be a space between our doors. And this one should be just slightly farther from us, should be just slightly smaller, but probably no one will ever know. So the sides of these are the lintels of the 2 doors. So the jambs of the doors would be straight up and down. So we're going to find that little piece of that line right there, and if you want to do it like some of the other students do, put your pencil on it, push that ruler right up against it. There needs to be a space. We're going when we put the color on. Okay, there we go. we're going to do the same thing again. Now this needs to be parallel to the side of the building, parallel to the side of the paper, perfectly straight up and down, vertical, or your doors will look really weird. Okay, so there we go. We've got one door, and then we will do the same in the next door with the space in between them. Find just a little bit of that door, and push our ruler up against it. Should be perfectly vertical, parallel to the sides of the doors, parallel to the buildings, parallel to the edge of the paper. Straight up and down. Okay, and then one more time. Put our pencil right there, push the ruler up against it, and it should be straight up and down. Now I am going to work backhanded in this case. So I put my pencil right there and push my ruler up against it, see? And I know that my far portion of my building is straight up and down, so I am going to use that to help me make the other side of my door. With that space next to it. So we should have a door, a space between the doors, another door, and a space on the end of the building. So, you know, doors for like cats and dogs, or something like that. An entry door and an exit door, perhaps. Now, I'm going to clean up some of my previous markings, that the alleyway was 2 centimeters wide, and that this particular building is 4.5 centimeters wide. Okay, and since I've always got my little duster brush handy, I'll dust that off right there. Okay, now, so we can start putting windows into this building, and it's going to have some interesting window adventures going on as well. So let's start by placing the top left corner of the ruler on the vanishing point, and we're going to rotate all the way up to this orientation, and we want to be able to see that first window in the first building just peeking out from behind the ruler, and we'll just barely make it visible. Now we're going to check our vanishing point right here, make sure the corner of the ruler's on it, hold your ruler down firmly, and we're going to draw a line that goes most of the way across the building with a small space on either side. Now I'm going to bold it, but you should draw lightly so that when we reveal what we've got, if it's not right, you can fix it. So in this case, I'm pretty satisfied with my drawing there. I've done this a few times, of course, but I'm pretty satisfied with it. So now, similar to what we did over here, I'm going to check the vanishing point, put the top left corner of the ruler on it, and find the bottom of that window. So we're just touching the bottom of that window, and we are on the vanishing point over here, and we want to draw our line so that they line up straight one above the other, if you can make that happen, and it will be tilted toward the vanishing point, pressed up against the ruler. Got to hold the ruler down firmly so it doesn't skid. Okay, that's pretty good. So, having done that, now we're going to turn our ruler in this orientation. We want the side of the window to be perfectly straight up and down, parallel to the side of the building. So we should find a little bit of the window peeking out from behind the ruler. There it is. And then we just make sure it's straight up and down, perfectly parallel to the side of the building and also the paper. And we're going to close that window up. And there's a space next to it, so when we apply color, we'll be able to color around it. We'll do the exact same thing again. I'm going to work backhanded this time. I'm going to find our ruler's edge. We're going to slide it over till just a bit of that window is peeking out from behind it. Just a tiny bit. And it must be straight up and down, parallel to the side of the building, vertical, parallel to the side of the paper. We're going to close up that window. And I'm drawing with a bold line, but you should draw with a light touch. So if you have to make erasings, it's easily done. You can bold it more. Trying to make it go away if it's very, very dark is difficult. There are portions of my drawing you may not be able to see, but I can still see markings on them, and that drives me crazy. However, that's part of the price you pay as an instructor, is that you may have notes and markings along the way in your artwork. No one else can see it, but you know it's there. Sometimes it makes you sad. Okay, so this is coming along nicely. Slow and steady is a much better way to make your work than fast and reckless. and this is pretty steady. So now we're going to put in a kind of a fancy window here next. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to take the top left corner of our ruler, park it on that vanishing point. We're going to rotate it up until we find that second window, the top of the second window in the first building. And we're going to hold our ruler down, check the vanishing point, make sure it's accurate. We can see just the top of the second window over here. And we're going to draw another line. Okay, they should line up with each other and they should point at the vanishing point. Now in this case, we're going to come down to the bottom of the third window. And we're going to hold our ruler down. We're going to find this bottom of this third window. And maybe we'll do this. Now before we do that, let's think about this. Maybe we'll go to the top. Yeah. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the top of the fourth window. So we're going to park our ruler on the vanishing point. We're going to find the top of the top of the fourth window. So we can just see a little bit of it peeking out from behind there. And now we're going to draw another line. This should line up above, one above the other, if we can make that happen. Okay, let's see what we've got. Now, similar to this over here, where we have a kind of a billboard, we're going to put a fancy window in here. So our first task is to close up the sides. So we're going to find the sides of that large window, and we're going to line them up so they peek out just a little bit from behind the ruler, and then parallel to this line, parallel to the side of the paper, straight up and down, vertical, we're going to connect those sides together so it's perfectly straight up and down. Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing but on the other side. So we find the side of it, we're going to find just a little bit of the window peeking out from behind it, perfectly vertical, parallel to the side of the building and the side of the paper. I'm going to close it up. Now I'm going to bold it because I feel confident, but you should draw with a light touch so that you can erase things later if you need to. So in this case, now we have a larger window parked up in here. We're going to spend a little bit of time doing some decorative work on this. So let's, from the bottom of the window, we're going to just come up just a bit and make a dot. So what we're going to try to do here is make like a stained glass window, an arched window. So we put our ruler on our vanishing point, we rotate it up until we find the dot. Make sure it's on the vanishing point. Hold down your ruler and we're going to draw a line that passes through the dot with a small amount of space on each side of it inside that square window we just drew. So it should be like what you see here. Now we're going to turn this into something like an upside down letter T in this case. So we're back to our dot. I'm going to put my pencil on it and I'm going to lay my ruler right up against it. And then I'm going to draw a line straight up but not all the way to the top of this box. I'm going to leave a space. Okay. So we should have something that looks like an upside down capital letter T, if you know what I'm talking about, and I'm hoping that you do at this age. Now, if you had been in my 6th grade class, or perhaps my 7th grade class at an earlier time, you'll know that we do some dotted line drawing technique. And so we're going to try to draw a nice curve here. We're going to start at the corner of our fancy window and dot, and when we get up to about here we're going to start curving inward until we hit the top of that line we just drew a moment ago, and I'm going to dot again. I do this so that if I make a mistake it's easily corrected. So it's a bit of a variation on a sketching technique, and it seems to work very well for students. And I believe it is a good technique for students, mainly because it causes them to slow down what they are doing. So that curve looks pretty good to me. So now I can go back and bold it up. I can connect my dots. Alright, that is looking pretty good. Okay, see, it's kind of straight and then it starts to curve. Now we're going to do the same thing but in reverse here. So we're going to dot up. I'm struggling suddenly. Dot up. Now in this case our curve would start to happen just a little bit later because it's closer to us. So it won't be totally a mirror image of the other side. So here we go again. Looking good. Just keep on dotting. And then if you have parts of it that you don't like, you just can erase that away and then keep the dots that you do like. That's what really sketching is all about, is the idea that you're looking for something in all of these stray marks, and when you finally get what you're looking for, you erase all the other stuff and then you reinforce the markings that were working for you. Okay, that looks pretty good to me as well now. So I'm just going to hold my line one more time. Alright, so now we've got kind of what looks like a shuttered window of sorts there, but we're going to turn it into a stained glass window. That's the goal here, so let's get this turned around like that. Okay, now we're going to take our ruler. We're going to do some dot work here first. So we're going to go in the middle of this, we're going to put a dot. And then halfway up, we're going to put another dot. And then halfway down, we're going to put another dot. And we're going to use these dots to help create the panes in our windows, P-A-N-E-S. Place it on the vanishing point, rotate it to the first dot. I'll tell you what, I like to draw so that I can see what I've made. So let's try this. Let's put it on the vanishing point, rotate it up to the topmost dot, and draw a line. Just don't let the ruler skid. It should be tilted at the vanishing point. We're going to rotate it down to the next dot, and that way we can see what we already drew, and that is really important. Check your vanishing point. You really can't do that too often. So I'm going to draw a line, and then we're going to do the same thing again. Check that vanishing point, come down to the next dot. And just the practice of cutting things in half and then cutting them in half again and then cutting, that's you'll see that a lot in visual art and in a lot of other things once you start noticing the world around you. Okay, now having done that, see, we've got what appears to be 8 panes. And we're going to break that down even one more time. I gotta fix this corner, it's driving me nuts. Okay, I guess that'll work. So we're going to put a dot halfway across the left side of our fancy window. We're going to put a dot halfway across the right side of our fancy window. And we'll take our ruler and we'll orient on the far dot, trying to match parallel to the center line, straight up and down, vertical, and we'll draw our line. Now I'm going to work on the backhand side of the ruler next. I'm going to find the dot. I'm going to put it straight up and down so that it is vertical. It is parallel to the other markings for the panes of glass. And I'm going to hold it down firmly, and I'm going to strike my mark. And when I remove the ruler, it should look like I have a multi-pane stained glass window, perhaps, or a lot of people see this as the jail sometimes, and they think or they see it as a castle with some sort of a barricade in the window. Alright, so we're making pretty good progress here, and this second building with the Victorian roof looks pretty nice. So I think we'll put in perhaps one more window or something that could be used as a sign in here. And so we'll come down from the bottom of our fancy window, and let's just put a dot about right here. And then below that, let's come down and put a dot about right here. Now I don't think we really need measurements for that, but sometimes you might need a measurement. So if you needed one, I would say it appears to be 1 centimeter from the bottom of the fancy window, and it appears to be about 1 centimeter up from the tops of the doors. So 1 and 1. Let's take our ruler, place it on the vanishing point, rotate it up to our uppermost dot there that we just drew a moment ago, and mark a line. Hold that ruler down firmly so it doesn't skid when you're making your marks. I'm drawing with bold touch, but you should draw lightly if you have to erase. We'll do the same thing again. It's got to be on the vanishing point. Rotate it up until we find our dot. That helped us figure out where we were going to draw it, and these should line up one above the other. Okay. Now, that's going to be a rather large window or a sign of some sort, perhaps. I think if we were able to draw a vertical line that matches the windows above it, that would be fantastic. So let's take our ruler, turn it in this orientation, find the sides of our windows there just above it, side of the window, and right here the corners of the window I just drew are peeking out, and so we'll do that. And it makes that very large. It's starting to kind of impress me maybe as a theater or something, a cinema. Well, let's do the same thing on the other side. This would be, if this lines up, it will be easy. If it doesn't, you have to manipulate it a bit. So I'm looking at this that lines up with the other window, lines up with the window above it too, strangely. And then I'm going to close up the far side of the window. So I got to go back and maybe touch this up a bit. But otherwise, I'm satisfied with the way that building looks right now. And in this case, it just impresses me as something like a theater, I guess. So that's we're making good progress here. Now we're going to move on to the next building, and it looks like we're going to have to make our alleyway slightly narrower as we get farther from us. The buildings will get slightly narrower, or they will appear to. And that's what we're really, the illusion we're attempting to create here. I'm just going to bold some lines. I think they could be a little bit more visible to the viewers of the instructional video here. And, you know, it's never a bad thing to have your visual art be more visually noticeable. And in this case, it's kind of important that I go back and continuously bold things so that my audience out there, which is my students, can see what we're doing here. Okay. Now, over here, this first alleyway was apparently 2 centimeters wide, and we reproduced that over here. This alleyway looks like it's about, a heavy 1.5 centimeters. And so I don't see why we shouldn't reproduce that over here. In fact, if we find a 1.5 and then we just scoot it a little bit farther, that's probably good. Let's get this right in the middle of the building. Okay, there's 1.5. We've got 1.5 centimeters right here on the edge of the building. We're going to scoot it over just a little bit more, and that's where we're going to put our dot, representing the next building, the third building on the right side of the street, and the alleyway between them. So, just like every other building we've done so far, the sides of the buildings need to be perfectly straight up and down, vertical. Just like this one and this one and this one, and the side of the paper is perfectly vertical. So you have to line your ruler up so it's straight up and down, and you can easily see that it's vertical compared to the other buildings. Okay, once you've got that drawn or held down firmly, we're going to strike a line. You should draw lightly, although I draw with a heavy touch, simply because I'm making a video and I want you to be able to see. So, now is it necessary to always do this like this? Probably not, but in this particular project, which is really a series of perspective exercises in manipulating shapes in space, I think it's important just to maintain that three-dimensional illusion here. So right here where these two lines meet, and I've seen many students successfully just hold the ruler down and then they slide the ruler up to it. And we want it to be perfectly sidewards. horizontal, straight sideways, parallel to the bottom and the tops of the paper. The top and the bottom should be straight sideways. Hold the ruler down firmly, press a pencil against it, and then make your mark. Then we will simply erase this part right here. Alright. So slow and steady seems to be doing the process right here. And also it allows others to keep up. If we were in the physical classroom, each time we drew some portion of a building, I would go around and check it just to correct it as it was in process, rather than waiting for more compounded mistakes to be made and then make it more difficult to correct them. But in the virtual classroom here, or the e-room, you will simply have to go back and replay the video if something doesn't look right, and just see where you went wrong at. And that happens all the time. So we've got our street level cutaway there where people can come and go through the alleyway. I'm going to put our pencil right here where these two lines meet. I'm going to slide a ruler up to it. And we're going to check it to make sure that it is perfectly horizontal. And it appears to be. Strike our mark. And then check what we have done. And in this case, it looks pretty good. So we'll erase this out. We really don't want it to look like it's a wire stretching off into infinity. Okay, it's times like these when you need to go around and try to clean up your artwork as much as possible. I'm starting to get smears on mine. I should be using a slip sheet, which is a piece of index card that I put under my hand when I draw. That keeps me from smearing things around. And you may have noticed if you look at the back of your hand many times, you get a lot of dirt on the back of your hands when you draw, simply because of the, just the dirty nature of graphite, which you all would call pencil lead. However, graphite is it's dark, smeary substance. It gets all over the place. When you're drawing on canvases trying to prepare a painting, it gets everywhere. Alright. I think what I'm going to do here, just for entertainment value, is draw a square window in this door, this first door, just so it is something different than across the street. Now, if we park on the vanishing point and we rotate up to about the top of the door, a little bit of the door should be visible, we draw a line that does not go all the way across the front of the door. And then we'll just lower it down a little bit. About this orientation, I suppose. And then we'll do the same thing again. We'll try to line it up above and below, so it's the sides of our window are straight. But you got to hold on to that ruler, because you're pressing up against it with the pencil, and when you do that, it causes the ruler to skid sometimes. So look, now we can just go back here like we did our other windows. A little bit of the window is peeking out. We want it to be perfectly straight up and down. Close up the side of that window. If there's too much of it slinging out there, you just erase it off. That's good. And we'll do the same thing in reverse over here. I can see just a little bit of the window hanging out from behind there. So I'm going to make sure it's perfectly vertical, parallel to the side of the door, parallel to the side of the window, parallel to the side of the building, parallel to the sides of the paper. Perfectly straight up and down, like that. And so, that is looking pretty good. I'm starting to see some things develop in our piece of artwork here. Now if I go back over here and kind of darken up some of my work, make it a little more permanent there perhaps. So a lot of making your artwork is continuously addressing parts of it that you've already drawn in and just making it look like it's more of an intentional drawing. Now, I've got the ovally windows over here, so I think I'm going to go with some diamond-shaped windows over in this building here, or these two doors, so I'm going to go diamondy. And I'll do the same thing. And so this is, you'll see why in the 6th and 7th grade design projects we use the letters off the flag language, and a lot of these those letters have shapes in them that we come back and use many times over again in our drawings in subsequent pieces of artwork. Now in this case, the bell just went off, and so that means our time here for today is up. But I do want to finish my diamond-shaped windows here. And then when we resume in the next session, we will continue on the third building on the right side of the street. Now I'm hoping that you are keeping up with the instruction, and if not, you may have to work, outside of our class time here in order to catch up and just review the video. And everything you need to know has been presented in this video, and everything you need to know about the theories we're working behind here also are in the videos on the notes. And so you're probably going to notice that pretty much everything we cover in the notes shows up in the instructional video. Okay, let's see what we've got here for right now. And I got to say, it's looking pretty good. So we've got 2 more buildings on this side of the street to draw, and then we're going to do some background work, and we're going to eventually deal with some streets and sidewalks, and then detailing it, and we should have a tremendous drawing here before very long. So thanks for your attention today, and I will see you in the next session.